Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Black Advancements of Female Voice Zoomcast. Today, we're going to be discussing the topic of interracial dating. And before we get into the discussion, let's go ahead and we're going to introduce our team, the people that are normally here, and then we're going to introduce our special guests because we have some experts on the topic who have experienced interracial dating. So I'm going to start. My name is Shanice.
I'm
Hello.
NECA.
I'm sorry.
Sorry, child. I'm NECA.
I'm Lauren.
I'm Takara.
And now we're going to introduce our special guests. We have two ladies joining us. If you guys want to introduce yourselves.
Hi, I'm Patrice.
I am BB.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you for joining us, ladies. I'm so glad you guys are here to add some perspective in this conversation. So, before we get started on the conversation of interracial dating, as you're aware, NECA, if you watched our first conversation, NECA gave us some statistics on interracial dating. And we noticed that when we discussed employment options, when it came to interracial dating, with Black men, we're at, if you're wanting to date inside your race, you're about a 50% chance of finding a Black man that is on the educational level as you. Whereas if you look outside your race, then the increase it goes over to 90% with other races. So since this is an issue in the Black community, we're gonna go ahead and give it a discussion, and then we're gonna have NECA go ahead and give us more statistics regarding interracial dating.
All right, so I have some statistics here from pewsresearch.org. They are showing that Black men are twice as likely as Black women to marry interracially. And those statistics are about 24% of Black men and 12% of Black women. It goes higher in those that are college educated, even those who have some college. But with a bachelor's degree, Black men marry interracially at about 30%, with Black women at 13%. And also another interesting statistic that I saw is that Black women who marry white men have the lowest divorce rates of all. It's even lower than white men that marry white women. While white women who marry non-white men tend to have some of the highest divorce rates of all interracial couples. So that's my statistics.
Wow, those are interesting statistics.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Wow.
What was that last one, NECA? I'm sorry. The last one was, you said white men that marry white women?
White women who marry non-white men have the highest divorce rate.
Thank you. I'm glad I clarified that. Okay.
Wow.
That's very interesting.
Very interesting statistics here. Okay, so given the statistics, given where our last conversation left off, do you feel Black women should consider the option of dating outside their race, and why? And we don't have a particular order, so whoever wants to answer this question first may go ahead and jump right in.
I'll jump in. Yes. If we are listening to the statistics, okay, people, like, things are not looking all that great for Black women, okay? So it is in our best interest to date everybody, taste the rainbow, keep your options open, get out there and see what is really good and stop limiting yourself. I definitely have dated interracially in the past and would do it again. And I think everybody should.
All right, anybody else want to go next?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I am married to a white man, but prior to marrying my husband, I have dated outside my race. But it was never serious, but I was always open to it. I feel like if there are certain, at least for me, there are certain qualities that I'm looking for in a man. I don't care if you're yellow, blue, or orange. The qualities are more important because that is what, especially in terms of a marriage, is gonna survive, until the end of time. Because looks and physique, that all fades away, and it just so happens that the person is white, then why not? It's kind of like what Mecca mentioned, like, why limit yourself? You know what I mean? Taste the rainbow. I love that. taste the rainbow. Because at the end of the day, like if you're what is important to you, and for me, respect is huge. And not that I was never getting respect, from a black man or whatever, but it's like, oh, he checks all the boxes that I'm looking for, but he just happens to be white. All right, because all the black men I've dated haven't, taken a ring out and say, hey, or, it didn't go in that conversation. So why not?
All right, awesome. Thank you for answering that.
I
Anyone else?
agree.
Okay.
I agree as well. Yeah, dating outside of your race, it just keeps you from limiting yourself and allowing you to explore the options of not only white men. It can be, like Becca was saying, tasting the rainbow. It can be a Colombian. It can be, an Asian. Just different types that are out there. And particularly when there's so many African American men, and it's sad to say, that are incarcerated or doing other things. And so instead of sharing a black man, why not date outside of your race and get your own man? I mean, the options are there. So yeah, I would rather not share and be open to dating outside my race. So.
Lauren,
Right.
Clara?
I would say I agree. Like, I think, yes, I agree with I really like what everybody is saying, but I just agree that, yes, we should, don't limit yourself, and wherever you find love, that's what's important. It doesn't matter, like you say, what race they are, what nationality, what color. Like, you should, if that is where the love is, you should marry it.
And if they love you,
Amen.
and if you find someone that loves you, so let's say you're dating only black men, and yes, they love you, but then you find this one, I don't know, diamond in the rough, and then it just so happened like he loves you more than you. Why not? My mom told me that. Somebody told me that, like, oh, get you a man that loves you more than you. Like, oh, okay. And
What
then I don't know.
saying he loves you more than you love yourself. He loves you more.
No, or like get you
More
a
than you
man
love
regardless of race, more than you love him. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yes, just
Yeah,
a
yeah,
little
yeah.
bit more. It's always
Yeah,
important, just a
yeah,
pinch more.
yeah.
They love you more.
At least
Yes.
in the beginning.
Yes.
And like what BB said, like, all right, you don't want to share. I mean, I think regardless of what color they are, I mean, things happen.
Right.
A man is a man, regardless if they black or they white. It's my lights are off, they're all the same. You're in that bed, they all the same.
We all got
True.
respect, right?
Exactly.
Lauren, did you want to take this question?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really have so much of an opinion about this issue. I think, anybody should be able to date whomever they want to date. So I don't look at it as limiting yourself if you have a preference to do one thing. I don't think that you should make choices and say this is not what I'm not going to do. I think, people should do whatever they want to.
I definitely agree with what everyone is saying. I don't agree that you should make it a preference. Like you only date outside your race, or you only date this, or you only date that. That's when I think it becomes more of an issue. But I think you definitely should keep your options open, because your soulmate can look like you or they can't look like you. It's all about who God designed for you. And if he happens to be a man of a different color, then so be it. You just make that work. But yeah, keep your options open. So for those of you that have dated outside of your race, so I know not all of us have, but for those of you that have dated outside of your race, what are some benefits and also what are some challenges you found?
Well, what I will say, speaking to my experience, okay, so don't get upset, people, but I feel like men who are not Black are quicker to want to get into a committed relationship with you. My experience is that Black men will talk and talk. You'll be in this talking stage. Oh, we're talking for 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, 12 months. And there's never forward progression to the relationship. And I feel like men that I've dated who are white or Hispanic, they are more likely to want to talk about a relationship and being exclusive earlier on within few days, rather than part of the year, 9 months.
True.
But
I
that
don't know. I think it depends on the individual. 'Cause I've been in committed relationships with Black men as well. I think if a man's ready, they're ready. You know what I mean? And then I never forget, I went on a date with a white guy. I was younger, and he definitely didn't want to commit. You know what I mean? So that didn't last very long. So I don't know. I've had different experiences. Like I've had both. Maybe in terms of marriage, it's different. Maybe I've had Black men they are in committed relationships but didn't want to marry. Or does that make sense?
yeah.
Right. I
Yeah.
understand what you're saying. At the
A
same
different
time,
level of
too,
commitment.
right. And I've found that with dating white men or even Spanish men, that as Mecca was saying, they're ready to, whether it's even live together, they're just ready to take the next step. So they're ready to, if be a monogamous relationship and let you know that, hey, I'm committed to you in so many ways. And they're consistent and they're expressive about how they feel about you. You don't have to necessarily question yourself on where you stand with them. Sometimes I've found with dating within my race that they talk about it, like Mecca was saying, and like the ladies are saying, but they also are like, there's some other options out here as well. So don't want to necessarily take the progressive next step. I want to see what else I can do in the midst of what we're doing. Yeah, and that, no, it doesn't work for me. But what I do appreciate about dating in my culture is that there's so many more things that I have in common with them. So whether it be music or whether it be upbringing or whether it be spirituality or whether it be family, morals or different things of that nature, or whether it be how we see political issues or economic backgrounds, HBCUs, they have a knowledge of certain things that dating outside of my race, those gentlemen didn't know too much about. They may want to know about it. They may be open to those discussions, but they just don't already have that information that's been made available to them by their upbringing and the environment in which, they've come from. So yeah.
So you've kind of felt like you have to teach them opposed to them.
Right, exactly.
I agree as a negative, yeah, because they don't have the same experience in terms of culturally what we went through or experienced, because they, it's new to them. And it's the same for me. Like, there would be things that they culturally do, and I'm just like, what, it's all a learning experience. But in terms of a negative, I guess that would be the biggest negative, was if you're open to learn, and open to teaching. And in terms of teaching, I don't like really saying teaching because I'm not a teacher and they're a student. They have to be also open to learning about it.
Right.
And having the want to learn. Yeah.
Right.
Oh, go ahead, Vivi.
I was just going to say, and not base things on stereotypes either, on what they think they already know, versus being open to seeing it from a different perspective based upon me as an individual, and then us discussing it and not prejudging me based upon who they think I am because of television or because of anything else that they've been exposed to.
Yeah, what I was gonna say was another con for me, especially early on, is the heat that you will get from Black men when you're out
Mhm,
with your
mhm,
non-Black man.
mhm,
So I'm thinking specifically of an experience I had when I was in my mid-20s. This was like kind of like one of the first white men that I had dated and had been out and about. And we went to eat at Benihana's. And you know how Benihana's is, you sit there with a bunch of other, couples and
mhm.
people. So I don't know, it was everybody, it was very Black in Benihana's that day. And the guy the women weren't really doing anything, but the men were like even just making comments like, sis, that's what you doing. And I'm like,
Oh no.
Wow. Wow.
that's who you with.
Oh,
And
wow.
I'm just like, wait, is this what they really do? I got up and went to the bathroom. Another guy was like, "Shh, that loud, look at her." I was like, yo,
What?
I couldn't believe it. I was like, this is
Wow.
really what we're doing. And this was in
Mhm.
LA. I was in California at that time. And
Wow.
there's a lot of interracial dating going on in LA, much more
Exactly.
so than I had seen in New York at any time. So it was just, to me, it made me very uncomfortable at that time. But
Mhm.
I was like in my mid 20s, so I cared a little bit more what people think. At this age, I really could care less.
Yeah.
Mm.
But, that is definitely something that people will experience and deal with. And then another thing I was thinking of, there was a guy that I dated who was I felt was very inauthentic. And I felt like he kept trying to be very down and kept trying to
Mhm.
bring up all these
Mhm.
Black references and just
Mhm.
doing
Mhm.
too much. It's like, okay,
Mhm.
listen, you're a white
Mhm.
boy. I know you're a white boy. Just be a white boy.
Mhm.
You don't have to
Mhm.
prove that you know this song or that you studied this and that and blah, blah, blah. Just chill. So to me, that didn't last long because I can't deal with foolishness like that. But
Right.
sometimes there's some things like that that will come up that are annoying.
Yeah.
I
Like
don't know if
going
you
to
guys have
the
experienced that.
yes, going to the movie theater with the white guy and he thinks he needs to talk throughout the movie or be really extra loud and dramatic in the dramatic parts or laughing extra loud. And I'm like, are you serious? Black people, we don't all do that. I mean, where'd you get this from? Because there's a lot of Black people in the audience. We're not talking throughout the movie. We're not overly expressive,
Mhm.
but he thought to be down, like you said, he needed to do that. I'm like, no,
But
no, it's
was
just,
that not part of his normal personality to behave like that? Or was he
I
just,
don't think so.
okay.
I personally don't think so because it was always extra when we were around other Black people.
Okay,
When
yeah.
we were around white people, it was completely different. And I'm just saying in
Mhm.
social settings. He wasn't loud and dramatic in social settings around white people, but it was just different. So, and unnecessary because he was still off. Like even when he was laughing, it wasn't when everybody else was laughing though either. So it was still like he didn't get it. So yeah, yeah, it
Do,
was that
do
wasn't a
you
good
think it
fit,
was
obviously.
his insecurities?
I think sometimes, yes, when they're around our culture, sometimes they think in order for them to fit in, sometimes they need to do those things, but they actually don't. I think that, I'm actually surprised, especially in LA, that took place with Mecca. Um, Only because LA is so known for interracial dating.
It's a
But I
progressive state.
Yeah.
right, exactly, exactly. But you know, I've been out with white guys and have no issue with our culture accepting them. I mean, the Black men will talk to them, they'll act like, hey, just this is someone that they're just being introduced to that's a nice person. They don't have to make them feel one way or another. They're just open. There's no extra comments to them or to me for that matter about what I'm doing. So yeah, I don't I don't know what to say as far as
Yeah.
I think women though, as Black women, I do get disappointed when I see a Black man dating a white woman. I'm going to be just really honest with you. Because sometimes I think they're doing that exclusively and they haven't even dated any Black women. like you were saying, the exclusive dating to me takes on a different context when Black men are just doing that. Yeah.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
it's like it's an unfair assumption to make, because I'm wondering if that was why I was getting all that negative feedback so long ago at Benihana's. Meanwhile, this is like the first kind of white boy that I was really dating. So, we can't really just look at people out and about and make assumptions about what their dating preferences are. They may be out
That's
with
true.
a person of another race, but we don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If
That's a
Because
good point.
Yeah,
That's a
I
good
haven't experienced any of that, but I have experienced being out, and this is early on in our relationship, of white women looking at me like, oh, you're with him? Like, yeah. I've had that, but they never been bold enough to say anything. I mean, but then I would say that's the only thing I've noticed, and I would say also as a con, and that was anxiety for me. This was the first when I was meeting his family. I personally had anxiety, like, oh, are they gonna like me? You know what I mean? And would they, this is discussions I've had with him, and he's like, yeah, of course, because they weren't blindsided. But still, I feel like, yeah, they like, this is your family. They're gonna be nice to you and tell you, but behind, closed doors on the kitchen table, are they saying something else? But that was my own insecurities, and that was leading up to meeting his family. And I would say that would be a con, because it was like, if he was Black, I probably wouldn't have felt.
Yeah, I understand that insecurity, because you never know what families would say behind your back. So I definitely, that would be if I was in that situation, I would feel insecure in that way too. Because you never know with our country and the way things go with racism, you never know what people are saying with about you behind closed doors. So that's a really legitimate concern.
But don't you think that's something that all families kind of do, where you have the fear that they're going to talk about any person that you bring home? You think it's different if it's interracial?
Well, for me, I didn't care. Even in my 20s, I don't really care about what other people thought. Only like, so let's say my mom, I was concerned about, but like other family, I think kids too, I didn't care. But I guess it could go twofold, like if you cared, but I really personally don't care. Because I know he was a good person, you know what I mean? So I feel like if someone else in the family didn't like him, it was because of race, or they're just a hater, you know what I mean? But I, being that one, I guess wanting to impress his family, wanted to make sure, like, oh wow, what if they, you think that this would be okay? Like, they're not gonna, say something behind, smile on your face. And I think he also had the same view, like, I don't care, but no, they're not gonna do that. Like, I know my family, but even if they did, it was like, oh, I don't care. I'm like, okay.
I think
I have not dated.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Well, I shouldn't say I have not dated outside my race. I dated, well, I don't have much experience. I've dated someone outside of my race, but I was younger at the time, and he might have been in like maybe 15 or something, maybe years older than me, and he was divorced. So we really didn't gain much steam, and I think we were just in two, completely different places in life. But what you guys are bringing up are like things that I would think, like, as we're talking about this, because it's not something that I thought about before, like, like that's my preference to only date within my race. But that has been my life experience, is that I've preferred to date inside my race. I don't even want to say prefer, because it was not a conscious effort to say, oh, I only want to date Black men. That's just literally has just been my experience. But I do have some of the concerns that you guys expressed about the cultural differences, about like just that would probably be my biggest thing with dating outside my race. I would probably be anxious about, again, like, will we like the same music? Will we like the same thing? Will he understand my, again, politics and social injustice and how I feel about those kinds of things? Like, I would be worried that there would be too much of a gap there for us to move forward. but it's not something that I thought about before, like maybe until recent years, because I had another friend who suggested that I should consider, dating outside of my race. And I know other people who either exclusively or, just prefer to keep their options open, and they have had, really good experience dating outside of their race. So I'm glad we're talking about it today too, because I think it may give some other people more perspective and more insight that we, may not have on your own if you don't have the experience.
Yeah, and I think even the differences are like, because I feel like even if my husband was Black, and I wouldn't marry or date someone that we had different political views. Not even like that. So if he was a super far left Republican, I probably wouldn't date him because we wouldn't have anything in common, regardless if he was Black or white. Does that make sense? So like we have the
Yep.
same political views, but we may not actually have the same taste in music, and it's okay, And to me, regardless if he was Black, white, or Spanish, if we didn't have the same taste in music, it still wouldn't be a thing like, oh, I'm not going to date him, or I wouldn't marry him. But that's me, you know what I mean? But in terms of the deeper stuff, like, oh, like if your family racist, like, oh, okay, I don't know if this could move forward.
Yeah.
That was a bit more like, I don't know. But if you don't care, then okay, I don't care.
And that's always a concern, like what is their family like?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And a lot of times racists don't know they're racist, right?
Mhm.
So, you can
That's
talk with them
true.
about their family, but sometimes you don't really know exactly what you're getting into. And it doesn't even matter if they're white. Like if I dated a Dominican whose mother was supremely colorist, then he would tell me all of the crazy things his mother used to say about darker skinned people and his darker skinned sister and all of this stuff. So that was problematic. There was a guy that I dated who was half Black and half Indian, but he was definitely more on the Indian side of things, like East Indian. He didn't really have any contact with the Black part of his family. And Indian culture and their caste systems and the colorism and all that kind of stuff going on over there. It's always a concern that's lingering. So that's always something that is going to be in the back of your mind until I guess you meet family and feel settled with that.
And I think also in the views of the partner, if the partner is not shutting it down or doesn't understand or is not open-minded about it, then that's also something to think about, where I was more comfortable because I felt comfortable that, okay, he would shut it down if someone were to speak ill, but if you're with a partner and if he happens to be outside your race and they have that kind of negativity in their family, but they're not open to it and they don't see it, then that's concerning. I wouldn't move forward with that.
Yeah, it's important for them to be genuine too. I think that sometimes, with dating gentlemen outside of your race, that you want someone that you realize is in it for the right reasons. And that's in any relationship. But I mean, particularly, you want them to not be looking at you as this is a project kind of attitude, like this is an experiment, an experiment. Like, I'm just going to experiment with the Black people, see how this goes. And if it goes well, then maybe they're not as bad as I thought they were, if she's a good girl, but no, just genuine. And I think sometimes that does develop better when you do have certain things in common or have at least an understanding of we can express things to each other and learn from each other and it be received and they're acting upon the things that they're learning, versus just learning it and using it for some, other nefarious reason. I have no idea, but still, I think that there's ways that you can, of course, root those types of situations out. But I think also it's more genuine with white men dating Black women than it is for white women dating Black men. And I think that's why the statistic is so high for white women and Black men versus Black women and white men, because I think that Black women, we can sense things a lot easier and a lot quicker if this person is really in it for the right reasons. So that's why us being more open to dating outside of our race, even if they're not the right fit, we're going to cut that off, you know, within a reasonable period of time and not allow it to keep going and going and going, and willing to move on. So
Making sure
It's
he's not just
interesting that you say that. I was like in a clubhouse room that was talking about interracial dating, and they were talking about fetishization and how that is a factor sometimes in why some white people are pursuing Black men or Black women. And they were asking people's opinion about that and how they felt about that. Would they be comfortable with dating someone who was basically fetishizing them? And several Black men got on the stage to say that they don't mind that. And I was really shocked because I would think that nobody would want to date somebody who isn't maybe necessarily genuinely into them, is more just looking at them as a fetish. But yeah, several of them said that they don't actually have an issue with that. So it kind of
That's interesting.
lends to
That
a
is
little bit of what you were saying. Yeah.
Because I have an Asian friend. She's Chinese, and she refuses to date anyone that looks at her as a fetish.
Yeah.
Like refuses. Yeah.
Right.
She's like, absolutely not.
you don't want
Conversation that she said she had like early on. She's like, if you dated other Asian girls before, because if I'm your only one, I'm not going to be the first. Yeah. Which is a good point too, because I think I asked my husband that too. Yeah, I think I did. Because I thought I was like, that's a good. I wonder, like, if I'm your first, I don't know if I want to be that first or be your fetish, like whether it's a fetish or not. Yeah.
What was his response?
No, I wasn't his first white girl.
I have a question for the ladies on the panel who haven't dated outside of their race. Like, is there a reason why? Would you be open to it? Has it just never happened, or?
Well, yeah, for me, like I was saying earlier, it just never happened for me. Well, I keep saying that, but really, I dated one person outside of my race. He was Black and Italian, and it was just, and I didn't think anything of it. It didn't bother me at all. But I was younger at the time, and I want to say it was maybe like a 15-year age difference. So the relationship itself just didn't work out. I mean, it's not even that it didn't work out. It just never really even started. It just kind of didn't happen. We dated. It was like there was no bad experience or anything like that. And it just hasn't happened for me. I've been approached by white men, but it tends to be older white men. I mean, there was even one that I was like, oh, he could be like my grandfather. And I'm like, no. And I mean, y'all, let me tell y'all, he was like, I just think you're beautiful. I mean, like he was in a grocery store talking to me. He talked to me outside the grocery store and inside the grocery store. And I mean, I just kind of, I was like, I kind of laughed, as a coping mechanism, like, okay, this is kind of weird. But he was like, I mean, like literally like, yeah. And he didn't ask for my number or anything. And I definitely did not offer it because, I mean, I have a father, like I don't need, and a grandfather. I don't need from anybody. I've been approached, several other times by white men. It's more so they compliment me. They don't ask for my number or ask to go out on a date. But they tend to be older than me. And in my eyes, I've never pursued those people because, not that I never pursued them, but it's just not even an option because it's like in my mind, I have a grandfather and a father. Like, I don't want somebody, like, I want to date somebody my age. It wasn't about their race. So.
Well, I had limited dating experience. I only dated probably like 3 people before I got married. So, and all 3 of them have been Black. One was Somalian, which is African Somalian, and it's a bit cultural difference. And he was also Muslim. So, and I'm Christian. So it's the biggest issue with us is just, of course, religion and then the culture. It's such a different culture between Black African American and Black African, which is would kind of be considered interracial because called intercultural. So I did intercultural dating before I met my husband, but I met my husband in college, and like we only been with each other since then. So that's the reason why I particularly haven't dated outside my race, because I don't have the dating experience.
Mhm. Yeah, I think for me, I'm not in spaces with white men. I work predominantly in education. I'm not in spaces with white men. When I go out to bars or parties or things, they are not there, and so they're not generally in my world. And because I'm in a relationship now, it's not something that I'm seeking out to do now. So it's just not part of my space, I guess.
What do you guys think about these statistics with marriage and divorce rates? They're interesting. I'm not sure exactly why that is the case.
I don't know. There's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah, a lot.
You know, some of your statistics, though, even when we talked about, even thinking about our statistics from the previous conversation about dating, you know, on your level, educational level, it makes me wonder about a lot of the, you know, historically that systemic racism and social injustice and how that has affected the Black man. And that even makes me, like, as you were, Neka, you brought up the fetish thing in Clubhouse. It makes me think about, like, you know, men have a fragile ego. So if your ego is already very fragile, that fetish thing may be, he may not even really view it as a fetish. He may potentially view it as being put on a pedestal, being a light shined on him. You know, like he may see it as a way to help him to feel better about himself, which we know historically that has been, you know, a thing that, you know, kind of the, you know, with like Black men dealing with racism. And, you know, if you're working a long, hard day, it's like you go home and you know, can be the king, you get the biggest piece of chicken. I mean, is a stereotype, but that has been talked about. And I think, you know, part of like maybe even the socialization of women is that, you know, men need to be, you know, their egos need to be stroked to, you know, to feel important. And perhaps that fetish aspect may be more of something that helps their ego.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. Maybe since it's more of a fetish, or you know, a man is a man at the end of the day. So if they're marrying a white woman, they're still going to cheat, regardless if the wife is white or Black. And you know, that woman's like, "Oh, I'm over it, and I left." Versus,
wait, are you saying all men cheat? Are you saying all men cheat?
I would not.
No.
I would not put it past anybody. But I know we talked about this too. Like as Black women, we probably have a better radar. Maybe that's why also in your statistic, the relationship when I believe, right, the man is white, the husband's white, and the wife is Black has a better success rate. Maybe that's also a part of that.
Yeah. It's interesting because you think about how we always talk about the cultural differences and all the reasons it won't work, but when you look at it, you know, it's a lower divorce rate than white marriages and Black marriages. So something there is working.
But there's definitely, I think, you know, there's, you know, that we haven't quite seemed to figure out. Yeah, I'm sure this is, you know, something that's multifaceted. It's a lot of factors that play into why divorce rates are so high, like you say, for, you know, Black on Black couples versus Black and interracial. And, you know, and again, I mean, that can go into the whole idea of, you know, fathers not being in the home, so on and so forth. I mean, we could talk about there's lots of problems, you know, and issues that are, you know, the things that we have to deal with that I think that play into what has happened over the years. It makes me wonder, you know, if Black men are not valuing marriage as perhaps we did in the 50s and the 60s or prior, years prior to now. Is like, okay, well, again, like that we've talked about too, that idea of like, I can get something else. I can keep looking for something better. I can keep looking for something better. But, if those things are all an option and marriage is not valuable to you, that there may be, an issue with generationally, that being taught. If people are raised in single family homes, they may not see the value in marriage. If you don't see examples of good, successful marriages and happiness with marriage, even though marriages are not perfect in their hard work, but if you don't see examples of the benefits of marriage, that I think has been lost over the years for Black families, whereas white families, I think, still continue to marry, perhaps for different reasons, maybe not always for love, maybe it's for, there is some love there, but, I don't know the answers to this, but it makes me wonder about, maybe other races value marriage for, whether it be stability or, love, and that has been deteriorating in the Black community over years, various over the generations, maybe since the baby boomers, I would imagine.
Plus, we talked a lot about how, many Black men don't have, the financial stability, or the educational, status that we talked about. And so that could go a lot into, the success of a marriage. It's going to be very difficult for you to be, in a happy relationship if you have, financial issues. So I think that could be,
Yeah,
right.
It's the number one reason for divorce, as they say.
Yeah, and I'm going to add perspective in as well. If you think about the statistic, kind of give it the Hampton rule, Lauren, you know the Hampton rule. There's all these women on campus to all of these men. So there's like 10 women to 1 man. So if you have options like that, you got 10 women. That's Hampton, HBCU, a lot of women, not a lot of men. You got 10 women to choose from. And then you want to kind of play your options, because there's not a lot of men that are in that situation. So that's another perspective, maybe why Black men are not getting married, because they have so many different options. I can date this person, I can date this person, because there's a ton of single Black women. Just to add that perspective too, because campus, they're like, that's one thing that got men excited to go to Hampton, was like, oh man, there's 10 of them and there's 1 of me. You know what I'm saying? So it got men excited and wanting to come. But that's the reality of the world we're living in. They have so many options, whereas we don't have as many options.
It's funny because Shanice and I went to college together, and I remember learning that statistic when we first came. But a lot of times it was used as a way like, okay, little Black girls, we want to just put you in perspective. If you meet a man that, likes you, it's very likely that he might like a lot of other women too. So don't expect too much. So I think also, some of the things that we tell women and we tell boys, that has to be accounted for as well, because that all plays into what we think about ourselves. And a lot of women are kind of like, listen, maybe I don't want to get married. Maybe I don't want to put up with those things. Or like you mentioned, maybe I don't want to share with another woman, or maybe some women do want to share. So, in this kind of world that we're living in, there's all kinds of things that are going on. It's not the traditional way that things used to be. So
that's true.
That is true.
Yes, but I was wondering with that statistic as well, are we noticing that Black men are more quickly marrying white women, and vice versa, that white men are more quickly, when they're dating a Black woman, marrying them? Because I've noticed that Black men tend to put a ring on it more quickly when they're in an interracial relationship. So they're allowing the relationship to progress, and whether it's, moving in together and then getting married, it's short term, within 2 to 3 years. But when they're dating within the culture, it may take, 5 years, or just be a long term relationship type of thing. But with vice versa, with Black women and dating white men, that white men are like, okay, within 2 to 3 years, they also marry Black women. So I'm just curious as to that statistic, if they're factoring in that as well, how quickly the person is marrying outside of the race as well.
Well, the statistic definitely wasn't looking at like dating time, dating to engagement. It was just literally interracial marriage and interracial divorce. So
Because they get divorced a lot. Well, I guess maybe speaking of the athletes that date outside the race, that you see them marrying these women, very frequently, even if they're cheating on them, they still marry them quite quickly. But like prior to that, when they were in high school or when they were in college, they weren't in these committed relationships and marrying these women shortly after getting in the NFL, or getting in the NBA or different things. So that's why I'm just, wondering, why is it that the divorce rate is just so high with Black men and white women or women that aren't Black, that Black men marry? Yeah.
Good question. That's a good thing.
I don't know, maybe because they like being a fetish.
Yeah, that's true.
The fetish phase has worn out.
Right.
Right. But there's, a lot of men talk about, liking women that are exotic, and there have been, and a lot of these things are stereotypes. I'm sure all men don't feel this way. All Black men don't feel this way. People are, have talked about like, Black women are out of style, and we know that colorism is certainly an issue, and we have also too, if for years you were, if you think about sometimes that historical perspective about, white women were not attainable. You weren't allowed to have, you weren't good enough to have a white woman. And now they can all get them now. So it's not just getting, Black women. They're not limited to Black women. They're not limited to white women. They can have access to everybody. And there already are not a lot of them. So now that 10 Black women turns into 25, Black, not Black, 25 women that you can date instead of, and now it's like now they want to taste the rainbow. That's for sure. We know that.
Right. Yeah, they know. They
and
definitely...
we over here like, well, we want to, date within our race. But I mean, not so much that, like you said, that we want to. I mean, for some of us, it just hasn't, it just didn't happen. That just has not been my experience. But like you say, when you think about those statistics, it's kind of like, well, maybe numbers don't lie, and I do need to, open up my options. I need to maybe, take a long, hard look and open up after COVID.
Of course.
Not right now. I don't want nobody's COVID right now.
Yeah. So one more thing before we end the conversation. I read a very, very, very interesting article as I was preparing for this topic on, it was on scipost.org. And they observed something. They did a study and they showed that Black women that date outside their race receive less criticism than less criticism than Black men who date outside their race. And I just wanted you to get your opinion on it. Why do you think that is? Why do you think Black women receive less criticism opposed to Black men?
Well, we already know Neka's experience was contrastly different to that.
Yes.
Right.
So Neka probably over there like, look.
No, but
they
I
went
mean,
in on me, child.
They did, but that was just that one time. So I don't know.
Well, that's a significant, experience to go through something like that. Like,
yeah, it was.
Not, I mean, even if you don't agree with it, that's nobody's business to be saying anything to you, and like, please, get you something else to do because you're worried about the wrong thing right now.
It's very eye-opening.
I just wanted to play devil's advocate, and I wonder if it's because of the statistic, there's so many more single Black women, and are they just hating when they see a Black man with a white woman.
Yes. Yes. I'm not gonna lie. Yeah.
Or is it because the sentiment is that people feel like they have so many more options that if they wanted to, they could probably find a Black woman, but they're choosing not to? Where we know that the options are way more limited for Black women. And so maybe when they see Black women dating outside of their race, they may think that it's not just because, it may be that they just, their options were limited, so they're expanding their pool.
Right.
And then also, I think, you don't, when you think about the media and stuff that goes on, the people who are shouting from the rooftop that they don't date their own race tend to be Black men. Let's be for real. It's not any other race. It's not usually Black women. It tends to be Black men shouting like, I don't date Black women because this, and that. So I can see how that would reflect poorly upon them when they're out with Becky.
I'm
Yeah.
gonna tie it back to slavery. I'm sorry. I'm gonna tie it back to the way that slavery had viewed Black men. Black men kind of were in that, like, when they initially made like the rules, it was because Black men, we want to keep you away from our white women, whereas Black women, you can be ours, and you can we can rape you, we can do this, we can do that. But as far as the Black men, that is taboo. So I think a lot of those things have been ingrained in people over time. So anytime they see a Black man out with another woman, that automatically triggers that taboo. Whereas I'm just tying it in because I tie everything back to systematic racism. I'm sorry, that's the one thing you're gonna learn about me as we have these discussions. But
you're right, it contributes. You're right, Shanice. It contributes to the socialization of us as a people.
Yeah.
And we like to think that we are far removed from that, but we're not.
We're not. Yeah, we're conditioned to think one way because of the way it was back then. Black women, we can do whatever we want to you. You're not as valuable, but whereas black men, stay away from our women.
What you call it, NECA? Like they be teaching that self-hate. Like we don't often realize it, but often that, we have been sometimes socialized to, be colorist against, within ourselves, to be, and to really be angry. Because if you think about it, you see somebody in an interracial relationship and you upset about it, but really, have you stopped to think about, well, how does this affect me? Why do I feel this way? Some things are very, kind of knee-jerk reactions, and people aren't really taking the time to unpack or, really analyze, like, why do you feel this way? And some things are definitely, we have been, like you say, historically, from historical perspective, we have been socialized to, and indoctrinated to have hate within our race and culture.
And colorism is so real within our culture.
Yes.
That's why if you think about it, I mean, some of these things are kind of, they're so silly, they're almost non-topics, right? So it's like, if somebody else wants to date someone else, why does it matter to you? And when you really get down to it, it's kind of like, because really it's not anybody else's business. So
I think for me personally, though, with being from Arizona and there being such a small amount of Black people in our community, in fact, we were the only Black family in our neighborhood, that the few Black men that were in the neighborhood, they dated white girls because that's all, well, the majority of people that were around them. So then I did the same thing. I dated white guys or Spanish guys or different cultures. But then when I came to, and I started going to Howard and got a culture shock because of being around so many Black people. Then when I started seeing Black men dating white women, I was like, oh no, this is wrong. So for me, it was like, it was different than after I started going to college. But before it was like, well, that's just their options. They're just dating because there's no other option really out there, unless you want to date your family member, basically. But now I think, you know, I do still a little bit get that, like, wow, he could have dated a Black woman. You know, like you were saying, there's 10 Black women to every one Black man. So now it's like even more Black women because we have even one less Black man because he's dating a white woman. But I know it's wrong.
That's a double standard,
It's
though.
my
That's a
right. It's
double
my
standard.
fault. It's my
Double
issue. It's not
standard.
theirs. It's not theirs. It's my own triggers. So
Yes.
I just have to work on myself, ladies. That's all that is.
I appreciate you keeping
I
it
agree with you,
real.
Lauren. Yes,
Those
I got to
are
keep it real.
feelings.
It's
Yeah,
double
a lot of
standard.
people feel like you, BB. A lot of people feel
Oh,
like you.
They do.
Thank
They
you,
do.
Takara. I
They
appreciate
do.
it because
Mhm,
I'm
definitely.
struggling.
Yeah, there's definitely Black women that as soon as they see a Black man out with a white woman, it's just something that just hits a nerve. And yeah, so
And
that
when
is
you
definitely
think
a real
about
feeling.
it, you know, on a larger scale, who people choose to date can actually impact you because if a whole set of Black men are choosing not to date Black women, and you look at the way Black women are socialized to be extremely loyal to Black men, it's going to cause a huge problem if you're not willing or open to date interracially, but your counterpart is, then it widens the gap and it can actually end up creating an issue for you in the long run on a large scale, not necessarily just individuals, but when you look at it on the bigger scale. Because honestly, it doesn't seem like Black men are socialized in the same way to be very loyal to Black women as the opposite. So it can cause an issue. I know growing up, I went to a pretty predominantly white suburban school. And, you know, me and my little Black crew of homegirls, we were all about the little young Black boys trying to see who we could date. The Black boys are, for the most part, checking for the white girls. And so we just didn't date. So, you know, when you look at it, actually can have an impact on you on the larger scale.
Yeah, it may impact, like you say, it would negatively impact your self, you know, your worth. You know, you'll start to question, like, am I worthy? Do I deserve this? And you may not, you know, have the capacity. People don't always have that capacity sometimes to think outside the box and like, okay, well, this is not working for me. Let me just date outside my race. Let me date, you know, other men, you know, who are looking for me. If you don't think that you are, you know, valuable inside your own culture, it may be hard for people to see their worth outside of where you should be valued, where you feel like you should be valued initially.
And I agree because it could work the same way for Black men too. If they were constantly rejected by Black women, they might
That's
feel
true.
like I'm gonna date white women. So it works. It works both ways.
Right. You're right.
Yeah, that's so true.
All right, ladies. This has been a wonderful, fabulous conversation. I thank our guests. Thank you, Phoebe. Thank you, Patrice. Thank you, Lauren. Thank you, Neka. And thank you, Takara, for making this another great episode of the Black Advancement Female Voice. I'm gonna let you guys get a chance to shout out anything you want to shout out before we close, and then we'll wrap this up because of our time. Anybody want to give any shout outs?
Shout out to Black women. Taste the rainbow.
Yes.
Anybody else?
Can I
Yeah,
give
I'm
a
glad
shout out?
that we. I'm sorry, BB. Go ahead.
Oh, it'll be real quick, I promise. Can I give a shout out to Miss Mecca, who does these amazing waist beads, who's going to be at a pop-up shop on May 6th. Please come out and support my sister at Culture Coffee 2 in Washington, D.C. if you're in the area, 300 Riggs Road, Northeast. I'm telling you, if you haven't got her waist beads, please get some and show off your beautiful waist, body positivity. And this is going to be from 3 to 7 on March 6th. Thank you, ladies. It's been an
Thank you.
absolute awesome privilege to be with you, beautiful queens, tonight.
Oh yes.
All right, Takara, go
Okay.
ahead.
Oh, I forgot what I was gonna say now.
I'm
'Cause I'm
sorry.
like, that beautiful plug. That beautiful plug. I forgot. It'll come back to me. It'll
With
come
it.
back in a
I
second.
said it was going to be cricket. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. It'll come back.
All right. Lauren, Patrice, you guys got any shout outs?
I just want to thank everybody. It's a nice, beautiful platform of all these pretty Black queens.
Awesome. All right, of course, I got to shout out the Black Advancement. Without them, there wouldn't be us. So shout out to Black Advancement. Please like and subscribe. Make a comment. We would love to hear what you have to say on this topic. And we're out. Peace.
Bye.
Bye.